the Asteroid tournament. And I guess we are going to get started with our first game of the day, 2v2. So, Blue's still, I'm here with Kat today.
Hi.
And today we have Kanto from Team A, we have Morgan from Team B, we have Hexapus from Team C, and Gameslayer from Team D. Morgan does have the map seed for this game, so be looking to see what he does. That information. Map seeds do give you the layout of the map, they give you colony information, price information, random event information, so it can be quite powerful.
This map's looking very nomad. My first glance, lots of silicon. The colony it is electronics, so that's not good for nomads, but could still work.
Yeah, my main concern looking at this map is generally just that aluminum is going to be very awkward. There is room for a nomad claiming, well, a spot next to some of the aluminum, but what I'm really looking for is this scavenger.
A scavenger HQ has been found.
And there's the scavenger from Morgan. I guess this is all planned out.
Okay, well, Kanto really wants to compete.
Yep, I don't know if Contour just did that instinctively, trying to get it down. I think with his placement, if he was like a smidge faster, he could have actually locked out carbon tiles with Morgan.
Yeah, and that would have been more or less game ending for Morgan. I mean, he could have gotten maybe some lows around that, but it would be very painful all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Instead, Morgan manages to pick up both very high aluminums. He's going to have strong control over that, well, unless Hexapus gets in his way, which seems like it's going to be the plan.
Yeah. So I actually quite like Hexapus' spot here. I've seen Morgan go a bit far and he went straight for aluminium. Straight for 2 aluminium, should I say? Which he'll be competing with the others with, whereas Hexapus now has a high and 2 lows to himself.
A nomadic HQ has been upgraded.
So he's kind of avoiding the crossfire here, which is quite nice.
The main thing I would be concerned with for Hexapus is that he is relying on this cave to really generate his silicon, so this is going to diminish very quickly. He might end up okay in the long run anyway. You don't need the silicon for your elevators at the end of the game, but still something to watch out for.
Very true. I find often IO you'll often go into maybe even 3 or 4 silicon at some point and then rotate out of them later on. Hexapus going to solar panels, which is an extra drain on silicon, might need to pick up an extra one now.
Right, I'm not really sure why this move is being made. Power is still pretty low. I guess there are some garages, not as many as usual to start even. And solar panels are just not all that strong, especially since we're heading into a long nighttime soon.
Yeah. I almost feel like I would have liked to see electronics and Hexapus here. With so many scavengers, I feel like carbon's going to be cheap, and electronics colony. It just sort of all fits together nicely, I think.
That seems reasonable. I think the only other real option is probably water. It doesn't feel good for sure.
I think because this is IO, actually, fuel is better than water right now, just
Yeah.
in terms of income.
I think the reason I would avoid fuel is just because Morgan and Kanto are already in fuel, so.
Yep.
And since they're also both, well, since multiple people are also both in oxygen, both those inputs for the water are going to be pushed down, and let's get that little trickle of power, which is probably better than those solar panels.
That's very true. Another thing to consider is with a market this cheap, a nice pleasure dome early is often good. Just as a very consistent source of income, which will put a further strain on electronics again. So like sort of an abstracted version is that another reason to go into electronics there because of the pleasure dome demand.
I think that seems very reasonable. Instead, Kanto choosing to go for the patent lab. Chems are very cheap, so it's potentially viable, but it is always concerning to run this sort of building when prices are this low.
Yeah. So Kanto's gone straight for a superconductor, so I guess he's just gone straight for a power play. Curious if he's gonna like go for the sort of the well-known transparent aluminium to go with this as well. I don't think it's too great with the lack of aluminium on the map that
Right.
only feed into Morgan.
It would be great for Morgan or Hexpus, but either of the other two players without any access to, I guess, Gameslayer has this one low, which feels a bit questionable. But yeah, without access to aluminum yourself, that feels like you're just digging a deep hole.
Yeah, you could consider gone for slant, which I think are nice. Yep, he's gone for slant next. That seems quite good. As he is a scavenger along with Morgan, you can actually slant Morgan's very high without diminishing the resources.
Yep. Okay, so Morgan trying to control aluminum a bit more by dropping this nuke on Hexpus. Hexpus retaliating, getting this very high down to a medium. It seems like a pretty serious mistake when you have the remote very high that he could have attacked instead. But, it's okay, I guess. Because this tile can just very easily become something else for too
Yep.
long.
On the other hand, it does put a slight strain on the extra fuel cost having the remote one be the high one, but I think you are very right in your point of being able to rotate the near one. So market is still looking pretty terrible. As predicted, electronics is starting to look more and more nice, and Hexpus has got into it finally.
Right, the only other market that makes much money at all is food. Morgan pushing into additional food since his first group got frozen. But to do that, he scrapped out of his ion collectors, and that's already rising pretty quickly, so it's definitely a concern there. Has the option of transitioning some of his carbon pretty easily, though.
Let the bidding begin.
So nuclear engine pattern, I'd say it isn't too useful, but I mean with fuel on the rise, it might get some value for somebody. I don't think anyone has got any uranium coming in yet.
Right, especially in a game like this with only one person potentially getting into the salt, this becomes just much less valuable.
So,
Actually, I have Contour slang in iron collectors now, which is actually quite nice, with Morgan scrapping out and many water processed on the map. That iron collectors are due to make a ton of money very soon.
a nomadic HQ
Or
has
they
been
would
upgraded.
be if he had anything more than single buildings dotting his base.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there. He sort of stalled a bit on
The black
HQ2.
market is open for business.
That's a very common thing as someone who likes to rush patterns. You do have the option of just completely stalling on a HQ2 if you get your patterns and then no source of income
Scavenger
to go with
HQ
them.
has been upgraded.
Right, he definitely made strong choices for patents, but it was just, there wasn't much to supplement that. Going into all this aluminum now means he's going to be set up solidly for a space elevator late game, and it also means that we should probably see an end to this Morgan Hexpus feud over aluminum.
Yep, space elevator prices are okay, they're not great, but I guess with the state of the current market, I think getting one early on HQ5s might be a good idea, just as something.
Right, not many alternatives. We still haven't seen a Pleasure Dome come down, and that should still be a very strong option.
Yeah, just to sort of go back to the point again with the space elevator thing, it's going to put a further strain on them electronics we talked about earlier as well. Because I feel like this whole game is just revolving around electronics in some way
Nomadic
as it stands.
HQ has been upgraded.
Yeah, whoever gets into a lot of optimizations quickly for electronics could potentially make a very strong play into hacking electronics up and just making a huge pile of money before anyone can really get anything else going. But
Kanto's built a nice little bridge towards his aluminium mines, so they obviously save on shipping. However, without buying any goons yet, I don't know how I feel about this. It's like asking to be power surged.
it is. On the other hand, I think people are going to be focused on Morgan and Hexpus for the moment, even though Kanto has this really strong set of production in this triple ion collector.
Yeah, making him about 700 total a second between the three of them. Interestingly, Hexapus actually targets Gameslayer there with his basalt production, which isn't bringing him too much in between them. Bit of steel, bit of glass, and some basalt platforms.
Right, not entirely sure what the reasoning is there. Maybe just trying to restrict the silicon supply a little bit. He still has most of the control over that, although it is a very small trickle of production at the moment.
Yep.
Anto moving into a lot of silicon all of a sudden. Should work out pretty nicely for him. He again connects it all up to his base. Very easy transition.
Good for rotations, maybe bad for adjacency later on, once he wants to start getting triangles up.
Okay, so now we have 2 patent labs up. Kanta going for liquid batteries, Morgan going for thinking machines. So it doesn't look like there will be any conflicts along those lines yet, but plenty of time for slowdown strikes to drop. And thinking machines should be a nice prize here.
Yeah, I'm really liking the thinking machines pick up here. Again, markers aren't great, it'll set you up good for the elevators, especially with, again, aluminium, I think it's going to get nuked out further, so it's going to be highly contested later on. And obviously with dynamites in the map, you're going to be paying a lot of aluminium to repair them elevators later on, so I think it's just a strong pickup for that. On the other hand, liquid batteries, I don't think there's any rush for that. It is a good pattern IO overall, but that's more maps where people are going to be launching oxygen with that space elevators. On this map, I think it looks like people are probably going to launch fuel, most likely.
Maybe food for a little bit to start, but mostly fuel eventually. Liquid batteries would have been a nice play for Hexpus with his solar panels, but less useful for Kanto.
Very, very true with the nerf to nuclear plants. Hexapus paying a lot for this. No, maybe not. He's making power money right now.
Power is more or less dead at the moment. It should recover before too long as Morgan transitions out of some of his power, but seems like an okay play.
As you talked about earlier as well, Hexapus is going into them electronics hacks. Hexapus well known for these hacks, so this doesn't come as too much of a surprise. The thing that is surprising is he's actually optimizing oxygen alongside these electronics hacks.
Yep. Everyone does have optimization centers online at this point, but no one has chosen to go for the electronics optimizations, mostly focusing on life support and chems, which all make their own amount of sense, but...
Yep. Game Slayer going into a bit of steel as well. That's the only steel producer.
Interesting that Hexbus is still attacking Game Slayer at this point. Game Slayer is solidly behind at HQ4 with D-Dead. Does have some of his stock secured, but you have to wonder a bit about this.
I can't help but feel, as Game Slayer had the most money for the longest time because of the steel, Hexbus may have been scared from that big yellow number next to his name.
Our methods continue to improve.
Potentially it. Alright, no more movement on patents at the moment. Kanto still haven't gotten most of the big ones here.
Yep. So we have Morgan and Contour both moving into electronics now as well. One thing to note is that Contour has rotated out of that silicon, so Hexacus is the only real silicon producer if we disregard the small amount coming from Game Slayer's basalt platforms. So he has the potential to maybe do some little cheeky hacks there, or just monopolize the market in general.
It looks like he's going for a glass hack there, which seems maybe not the best with Game Slayer having easy access to glass production, but...
Yeah, I'm really not a fan of this. I mean, he's sat on 80 because he's wanting to upgrade, and obviously he's got 2 glass kilns as well, which he just rotates out of, so that's a bit unfortunate for him.
Yeah, works out nicely for Hexbus though. Does make sense to make that transition. Power is skyrocketing and Game Slayer is in so much debt.
One thing to note is Hexbus actually sat on 2 claims right now, so I just use this one there. You're going for 2 basalt platforms.
The black market is online.
I can't help but feel this is a bit overkill. I like one basalt platform. As someone who likes to hack, having like iron uranium coming in is just a nice way to cover your bases. But I think the second one's a bit overkill because you're not depending on the income too much.
Right. Definitely is nice when no one's competing with you in those markets necessarily. I guess Gameslayer is this game, but just being able to sit on the base demand with the iron uranium should get Hexbus a lot of money. He does still have 2 claim returns, so if things ever get overboard there, he can return them. But you're right, it does feel like a bit of an overcommitment there. On to moving into our first space elevator.
Yep, I think that's kind of predictable in how he likes to play. With that double aluminium, he can kind of afford it. In fact, he still has almost 600 left over from this, like might even get a second one soon.
Right. Do have to wonder if he's going to end up absorbing a lot of black market because of this. There are still very cheap slowdown strikes available. I guess popping the goon to get to dynamites is harder.
Yeah, there's no good game poppers, there's no circuit overloads, no network viruses, so
Successful.
it's not the worst.
Morgan also now moving into his elevator. This one can be nuked to pop the goon, but he does have
I
paper
don't like
machines.
this. I don't like the with a black market like this. You really don't want to put your space elevator on top of a resource. And if maybe like to have like rotated one of them electronics factories into it.
Yeah, that might be better, especially since Morgan likely will want to produce more aluminum before too long.
We have a hard-to-come-by land claim
Maybe.
available to the highest bidder.
Hard to tell with what Morgan and Hexbus are doing. With Kanto and Hexbus, I mean.
Yeah, Hexapus is pushing very heavily for this buying games lane. I think he's probably going to get it. He's with this rotation into the extra silicon from the basalt platforms, he's now hacking silicon, which I think is a very, very strong choice.
The black market is open for business.
Since Condor has actually got nanotech from his pattern rush, I wouldn't have mind seeing him rotate into more silicon, which he actually has just done. So Condor may actually thwart Hexapus here a bit.
Market is online.
Just starting to push into Morgan is interesting. Right, the big thing here is that Kanto is a lot more vulnerable to this black market on his elevator, and we're really seeing that come down already. Kanto is ahead, but he also needs to finish this quickly, otherwise his debt's going to catch up for him, and even if he does finish it quickly, it's potentially a big concern that his stock price after the buy is going to be pretty dismal.
Yep. So both players have actually lost their stockpiles of aluminium now, so these dynamites are going to hurt even more from now on.
Yep. Kanto definitely has a bit of an easier path into extra aluminum, but if he takes it.
Gamester buying into Hexabus here, which I really don't like. Hexabus being so close to the buy, Gamester is almost handing Hexabus the game here.
Right.
So he's going to get all of his stock back in the process. I would have maybe liked to see him just pay down some debt. Pay down some debt, maybe hope that he can survive long enough, because Hexapus doesn't have a good long-term strategy here.
Price manipulations to be
He's relying purely on hacks, he doesn't have an off-world, his optimizations aren't strong. And he's a nomad, so he doesn't have like the strong claims like the scientist does.
Slayer has gone ahead and paid off a lot of his debt. Expo's still hovering at that 98%, so it shouldn't be much longer. These hacks have really been doing a great job for Hexbus. It's a bit unfortunate? Not unfortunate, but Kanto really could have done a lot more to contest this.
Yeah. So an interesting development here, despite Kanto sort of being ahead in the scavenger battle going on, he is actually suffering severely from debt here as well. Which sort of leads to the potential to maybe Morgan can make the buy, maybe Hexapus can quickly buy Gamester and get some cheap stock on Kanto. Who, as I say, that buys pays about 100k debt, I think.
Somewhere around there.
The engineers have
Whatever.
advanced our production.
And whatever happens though, Hexbus looks to be in a dominant position. Kanto actually paying off some debt now, which I guess he's still solidly ahead in the race. He can afford to do that. Gameslayer pushing in just really hands Hexbus the game.
Yeah, I really don't like this. It's a common mistake of players to make, but it's almost like stock player 101 is don't buy stocks when you're about to be bought out.
Prepare for
Right, the
pending market
only way
adjustments.
that ever makes sense is if someone is in a position to finish off the person who's going to buy you. And then
Of
you
course.
think you can take things from there, but no one was remotely close to buying Hexbus. No one really seemed to want to buy Hexbus. So,
Yeah, in that position, all you can do is sort of attack with the black market and maybe pay off your debt to sort of basically make it more challenging to buy you out.
not much more to say at this point as long as Morgan and Kanto stay locked in their battle. Kanto has built the first Pleasure Dome, finally, making a solid 220 a second there without virtual reality, and without any adjacency, so just have to wonder if someone had built one of those nice and early.
So Connor's actually started buying a Hexapus as well, which may change the dynamic. This is sort of a subtle signal for like Morgan to help him, I think, but I think the only way Morgan will do that is Kondo starts setting up Morgan as well, because they do still seem kind of locked in this battle.
Right. I think even if they both back out, though, it seems very unlikely that they can take down Hexbus together.
It's starting now. I mean, the one saving grace is they do both have space elevators, and Hexapus doesn't. On the other hand, Hexapus, like the markets are good enough now that you don't need one.
Right.
With all the advanced tech being all chems, glass, and electronics being expensive.
Optimization
Hexbus also still having that aluminum access, which he isn't really using at the moment, but that would be a huge source of income, especially now with dynamites at 50k. I think it's okay to start overproducing aluminum and just collect that money instead of worrying about cheap elevators.
Yeah, I think as it stands, he is a bit more scared of... Oh, never mind. But I thought so. Konto does finish the buy there.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, because Konto got Morgan to buy into Hexapus, it's actually quite even now.
Yeah, that works out pretty well for Kanto there.
The black market is online. We're not surprised, just disappointed in you.
And that might really swing things.
The engineers have advanced our production.
But I guess there aren't great clusters for Kanto to be freezing. Nighttime freeze on solar condenser is not really what you're looking for here.
So, again, right now it's very, very close. Konto does actually have a slight cash lead now. And I feel like
Manipulations to begin shortly.
both subsidiaries are actually doing very little right now.
Right. Morgan should catch up and surpass GameSlayer before too long. But I think the difference here is just going to be Hexbus's hacker array. How is he going to use that? How much money is he going to get off of that? Theoretically, there should be a lot of room to make money here between all the iron steel, uranium. But we'll have to see.
Konto isn't currently moving into any kind of counterplay. He's staying out of it. It's 4 markets he's currently not in, which could come to bite him a bit.
On the other hand, he's solidly ahead in the race now. 300k away versus 450k for Hexbus.
Yep, with the launch he is even closer. So I think Hexapus is really needing this hack to come through now. I don't think it's gonna make the bridge the gap he needs to with it.
Yeah, it's not gonna do quite enough. Especially with carbon this high, that also really plays into Kanto's favor.
Prepare for pending market
With
adjustments.
nanotech available.
The black market is optimization routines successful.
So this is the point Hexapus just goes all in this hack, I think.
Yeah. The oxygen shortage and magnetic storms were a nice little thing. You didn't get the second magnetic storm off in time, but it was nice to see anyway. And Kanto should have this at any moment now.
I mean, he could easily nano attack on top of this as well. And that's a game.
Yep. Kanto really stalling out a bit early with the patent plays, picking up the really key slant drilling, and I think him being so far behind really dissuaded people from attacking him, which really let him come back into things. Morgan got attacked a lot early, and I think that played into Kanto being able to overtake him. He tried to help out taking out Hexpus, which was the best shot he had, but really just opened up that opportunity for Kanto as well.
Yep. I think it'll line up for him in the end. I think this does really showcase the strength of patterns on Aya. With Kondo picking them all up, was able to overcome that such a huge deficit there.
Yeah, I do wonder if he could have played this a bit differently, maybe focusing just on slant at first, but the superconductor and liquid batteries didn't do very much for him for a long... Well, I guess he didn't pick up liquid batteries until later, but superconductor is something he could have delayed somewhat.
So, just looking at the black market, seems like Hexapus was the big aggressor there. He seemed to target Morgan quite a lot there. This is his main target 11 times. And I feel like that almost does summarize the game a lot. That Kondo just wasn't touched.
Right. Kanto being that deeply in debt, you would expect Morgan to do better in the race against him with the elevators, but Hexpa's doing so much work keeping Morgan's elevator down that that really evened up. Optimizations, there were a lot across the board.
Yep, Kondo's slightly having the most, but I think Kondo, Hexapus, and Morgan, good optimizations. Gameslayer a bit behind, but obviously he got bought first, so I think he was probably in a reasonable long-term situation as well, had he not sort of just been bullied by Hexapus so much to basically get forced out of the game there.
I'm not sure I would necessarily call it getting bullied out of the game by Hexpus, as much as building a really large amount of debt from a very early point. But that is also fair. Only 49k of interest, nothing too excessive.
I think by the end he had actually overcome the debt. It was just a case of like Hexapus was too far into him, too close to the buy.
Right.
If the game went like another soul, I think he would have been in a good spot.
If he had that extra soul before Hexpus started buying in, something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Hexpus definitely did a good job of attacking Gameslayer while he was vulnerable. And managing to leverage those hacks well enough to get things done there. Alright.